It was supposed to be just a quick inspection. Tom Hughes, a real estate photographer, had done dozens of shoots for old houses across upstate New York. But when he walked into this one, a sprawling 1890s Victorian home at the edge of a dying town, he felt a strange pressure in the air, the kind you notice before a thunderstorm. The owners, an elderly couple, were moving to Florida. "Feel free to look around," the woman said, her smile polite but a little too quick. She pressed the brass key into his hand and went upstairs, muttering something about packing. Tom started with the living room, creaking floors, sunbeams through lace curtains, all charming in a dusty, forgotten way. But when he checked the blueprint the agency had sent him, something was off. On paper, the first floor ended at the dining room wall. In reality, the house extended another 6 feet. There shouldn't have been anything beyond that wall. At first, he thought it was a measuring error. Then he noticed it, the faint outline of a doorway beneath the peeling floral wallpaper. No knob, no hinges, just a seam, like someone had tried to erase it from existence. Tom's stomach tightened. He pressed his ear to it. Nothing. Then, faintly, a single knock from the other side. He stepped back so fast his heel caught on the carpet. His first instinct was to get the hell out. But his job meant documenting everything, even weird anomalies. So, he grabbed his camera. The moment the flash went off, the seam shimmered, just for a second, as if the wall were thinner than it looked. He lowered the camera, and there it was, a door, a real wooden door with a black iron handle. He swore it hadn't been there a second ago. Curiosity and dread wrestled in his chest. He reached for the handle, and the metal was warm, almost like someone had been holding it from the other side. The air smelled faintly of soil and something metallic. When he opened it, he expected a closet, maybe a pantry. Instead, he found a narrow hallway lit by a single flickering bulb. The walls were raw, unfinished wood. The sound of a clock ticking echoed faintly, though there was no clock in sight. He stepped inside, taking slow, cautious breaths. With each step, the hallway seemed to stretch, and the bulb overhead dimmed. Halfway down, he noticed the photographs on the walls, all black and white, all of the same family, mother, father, 2 children. At first, nothing unusual, until he realized that in every single photo, the family members were looking at him, not at the camera at him. Tom's skin prickled. He backed away, but the hallway didn't shorten. It grew. The ticking grew louder, faster. Then a low, drawn-out breath came from behind him, not close, but inside the hallway itself. He turned and saw the last photo had changed. It was him, standing in the hallway, camera in hand. And just behind him in the picture was the elderly couple, except their faces were pale and sunken, their eyes completely black. The bulb went out. The next thing Tom remembered was waking up in the driveway, his car door wide open, the camera gone. The owners were nowhere to be seen. When the agency tried to contact them, the phone number was disconnected. County records showed the house had been condemned for 50 years, and on the blueprint, that section of the house was never built. You know how some houses look perfectly normal in the daylight, the kind you'd walk past without giving them a second glance? That was 214 Willow Lane. White siding, green shutters, a little flower bed by the porch. But every evening, when the sun dropped below the horizon, that house changed. I never believed it myself until I spent a night there. It started when I was hired by the new owners, Mark and Claire Turner. They'd just bought the property from an old estate sale and needed help cataloging some antique furniture left behind. My job was simple: photograph and list everything in the place. The first floor was exactly what you'd expect, dusty but harmless. The air smelled faintly of cedar and mothballs. But there was one door upstairs, a door that didn't match the rest of the house. It was dark oak, heavy, and locked with a tarnished brass latch. When I asked about it, Claire's smile faltered. "Oh, that, we don't have a key yet. Previous owner never gave us one. Probably just an old storage room. but the way she said it, it felt like she was lying. That night, after they went to bed, I stayed up going through my photos every so often. I'd hear a faint tap 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 coming from upstairs. At first I thought it was the wind, but the windows were shut tight. The tapping grew louder, then stopped, followed by something else, a dragging sound. It was coming from the locked attic. I grabbed my camera and crept up the stairs, each step creaking like it was warning me to stop. When I reached the door, I pressed my ear to it. Silence. Then, just as I was about to turn away, I heard it. A whisper. It was so faint I couldn't even make out the words. Just the hiss of breath pushing through the wood. And I swear, I felt the door exhale. The next day, I asked Mark if they'd ever tried breaking it open. He chuckled. "You're not the first to ask." According to the realtor, the last owner insisted it must remain locked. Part of the sale contract. He said it like it was a joke, but the way his hands fidgeted told me otherwise. I should have left then, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. That night, when they were asleep, I went back upstairs with a thin screwdriver. The latch wasn't easy to pry, but after 10 minutes, it snapped. The door creaked open to reveal stairs. Narrow, steep, and leading into pitch blackness. The air that spilled out was freezing, colder than outside in winter, and it smelled of rot. I turned on my flashlight and went up. The beam cut through the dark, revealing an attic that looked wrong. It was larger than it should have been, much larger than the house itself. The walls curved away like I was standing inside a warp tunnel, and at the far end was a chair, a single wooden chair facing the wall. I moved closer. My shoes crunched over something scattered on the floor, old, yellowed photographs. They were all of people I didn't recognize, each one sitting in that same chair, staring straight at the camera. The faces looked terrified. The last photo I picked up was of Claire, but she was wearing different clothes, older style, from decades ago, and her eyes were hollow, like she'd been drained of something. I dropped the photo, and my flashlight flickered. In that split second of darkness, I heard movement, quick, scuttling, but heavy enough to shake the floorboards. When the beam returned, the chair was facing me, and it wasn't empty anymore. I couldn't move. The thing sitting in the chair looked like a person, but its skin was paper thin, stretched over bones that jutted at unnatural angles. Its head tilted slowly, as if curious about me. Then it smiled. My flashlight died. In the dark, the sound of footsteps came toward me, deliberate, slow, and wet. I scrambled backward, my hands finding the stairway. Something brushed my ankle, cold and brittle, and I bolted down the stairs, slamming the door behind me. The next morning, the attic door was locked again. The latch looked untouched, as if I had never broken it. I never told the Turners what I saw, but a few months later, I passed by Willow Lane again. The flower bed was overgrown. The blinds were shut tight. A for sale sign leaned against the porch. The realtor told me the Turners had moved suddenly, and the new owners. They say the attic door won't open anymore. Some houses have histories. This one had a reputation. Locals in Hollow Creek whispered about the place long before I ever stepped inside. They said it ate people, not in the literal sense, though the way they avoided walking near it made me wonder if they actually meant it. I never planned to go there, but then came the real estate listing. Victorian home, built 1892, 4 bedrooms, riverside view. The price was impossible to ignore. I'd been looking for a fixer-upper, and this one was practically free. The agent, a man in his 50s with nervous eyes, handed me the keys like they were hot to the touch. "Just so you know," he said, "the house doesn't like being empty." I laughed, assuming it was small-town folklore. But by the first night, I realized he wasn't joking. The first sign was the river. From my upstairs bedroom window, you could see it cutting through the forest like a ribbon of black glass. But at night, it made noises. Not the sound of water, not even frogs or crickets. It was breathing. Long, slow, human breaths, carrying across the water, and right into my open window. On my second night, the breathing turned into whispers. I told myself it was wind moving through the reeds. But when the whispers began saying my name, I shut the window and pulled the curtains. Inside, the house had its own heartbeat. At exactly 3:14 a.m., the floorboards above my bedroom would creak in a steady rhythm. 5 steps, pause, 5 steps back. There was no one upstairs. By the third night, I decided to investigate. I crept up with a flashlight, the beam bouncing against faded wallpaper and water-stained ceilings. The hallway stretched farther than it should have. I counted 10 doors. But during the day, there were only 6. Halfway down, I noticed one door at the very end. It was darker than the rest. The wood almost black. Something about it made my skin crawl. I reached for the knob, and the door pulled toward me. Just an inch, but enough for me to see the space inside. It wasn't a room. It was a hallway, lined with mirrors. My flashlight cut across the glass, and I froze. The reflections weren't right. In some, I looked older. In others, younger. But in one, I wasn't moving at all. That version of me stood perfectly still, head tilted slightly, eyes wrong. The pupils were too wide, swallowing almost the entire iris. And as I stared at it, my reflection smiled. A hand, pale and thin, pressed against the inside of the glass, leaving a streak of something dark as it slid downward. The smell hit me then, coppery, like blood. The mirrors began to fog, as if something inside them was breathing hard. I slammed the door shut, but the latch didn't catch. That night, I dreamt I was standing in front of that hallway again. Only this time, the mirrors were gone. The walls dripped with water, and at the end was the river, black and still. Something rose out of it, tall, faceless, wearing clothes that looked like mine. It whispered something I didn't understand, then lunged forward. I woke up gasping, to the sound of water dripping in my bedroom. When I turned on the light, the carpet was wet. River water. The last night I spent there, I heard footsteps again at 3:14 a.m. But this time, they didn't stop. They came down the stairs. I grabbed my phone, trying to call the agent, but the line went dead. The breathing started again, not from outside, but from the hallway. The black door was open, and in the dim light spilling from my room, I saw myself standing there, but not me. This version was soaked to the bone, dripping onto the floor, eyes pure black. It stepped forward, and every light in the house went out. The last thing I remember was cold hands around my throat and the sensation of being pulled, not down, but sideways, like I was being dragged into a mirror. When I woke, it was morning. The carpet was dry. The door was shut. The house looked exactly as it had when I moved in. I packed my things and left without looking back. The agent didn't ask questions when I handed him the keys, but he did say something as I walked away. "They never come out the same," he said quietly. "Sometimes they don't come out at all."